Verstadt will say, I will also have to abstain. Uh, Wrist. I believe I don't believe in gambling.
I will
What?
snort openly.
Drac turns and
What do you mean you
stares.
don't believe in gambling? It's
Stares
not like
at
it's a god.
stares at the manling and goes, "Then why's the purse empty?"
Well, the purse is empty because I was perhaps a bit irresponsible at a bar, but that was not gambling. That was letting off some steam. It's quite different.
Ah, good old-fashioned bar brawl.
This one understands.
I take it you lost.
He did.
I did.
Well, you're still standing, so didn't seem to have gone that bad.
No.
He was only standing after I picked him up.
Never mind then.
But anyways,
Wait a second. You're that elf the halfpenny gang was trying to... It is you! Without the lightning.
I will blink. Ah, that is where your voice is from. Now I remember.
Ah, well, nice to see you again. Even if you are in the company of people who don't understand how to gamble.
Verstadt.
Well, I'll
One of the
save you.
V's.
I'll save you this wrist. He wouldn't be able to. He has nothing to gamble with, unless you plan on wearing his oversized clothes for yourself.
It's true. I don't
Everybody's
believe in
Like a sign.
Vertstedt, you do notice that after your declaration about gambling, the two guys sitting nearest to y'all are giving you some, like... They have some looks on their faces that are somewhere between disbelief and disapproval.
Not to worry, I don't believe in gambling because I don't have the funds. You know, this empty pouch here is all I have.
So you're saying you do believe in gambling, you're just bad at it.
No, even if I did have the funds, I suppose I wouldn't gamble it away. I have other things to pay for. But
then you don't believe in gambling.
I don't have a taste for it, let's say.
Then say that, manling.
Very well, Master Dwarf, very well.
As y'all are talking, Helga approaches the table, crooked-backed, but nonetheless walking with surprising strength and speed. And as she comes up, she says, "Any of you want anything? Your guide should be here soon. And of course, we do offer complimentary family notification services if anyone would like to take a part. It's cheap, only costs 5 brass."
I believe I will pass, thank you. And Verstadt will ignorantly pat his water pouch. I assume that will piss her off.
She doesn't really care.
May I
Okay,
have a
nice.
small glass of wine, please?
She nods and says, "Aye." She kind of gives you, she gives you a really long look, and she goes, I think I've got some in the back."
I will nod.
Well, I could use a beer. And what exactly would you be notifying my family of?
Your death.
You see her kind of have a moment where she gets like a little excited, and then she gets immediately crestfallen and irritated by the elf's interruption. And she glares over at you, Verve, before turning to the halfling. It says, "In case something should go wrong, as is often the case for those who go to the Hager cribs, we would just notify your family of incidents."
How would you be doing that?
Oh, that's simple. We send a message.
Oh, 5 brass, that's a real deal for a message all the way to the moot. How could one not take that?
She does kind of frown at you in a moment. She says, "You don't have any closer family?"
Oh, no. You'd want to go see my real family, not a cousin's cousin.
She sort of scratches her chin for a moment and says, Fine, but we do send by pigeons, so the likes of it getting there accurately is concerning.
So,
Never
wait,
mind,
you're,
then Fred would probably just eat the pigeon.
You hear her mutter under her breath something about eating the letter too. But she turns and she says, "Any of you want anything else?"
I think we will pass. Thank you.
She nods and says, "A stout and a wine," and then she stomps off to the back. She comes back just a few minutes later, and she does produce a wine, though she didn't bother to glass it any differently from the beers. And she puts a halfling-sized pint. It's a notable bit smaller than what the dwarf got. And she looks down at the two of you and she goes, "That'll be 5 brass for the wine and 3 for the beer."
Ah, I see how this is, but my beer's smaller than his. Should obviously be 2.
Verstappen will also say, "Excuse me, ma'am, but I do believe it should be the same size for the same amount. Would be the fairest."
She sucks on her teeth and says, "If..." she says, "I have to check every coin the halfling gives me. Takes up my precious, valuable time."
I'll pay for the halfling. Give him a proper beer.
I will look shocked at the dwarf.
She pauses and looks again at the halfling suspiciously before saying, "Very well, one brass for the beer then."
I hand over a brass.
She takes it and gives you a funny look, and then she turns to the elf and holds her hand out and says, 5.
I will hand over 5.
She takes it and kind of looks down at the brass, looks back at you, looks down at the brass, and you notice she puts it in a different pouch from the rest of all the other money, but accepts it and goes back to the back.
Verstappen
Very
will-
kind of you, friend dwarf.
Drac.
Drac. Am I getting the pronunciation of that right? Drac.
Close enough.
I'll work on it then.
Verstappen will say, "I am sorry for the immediate racism there, Wrist. That's not the way to start off grouping together if we are to be venturing to the Hager cribs together."
Oh, it's fine. It's just something you have to get used to when you're blessed with being a halfling.
Some would say that. Some would say that.
Someone would?
A halfling.
Well, I just did.
All right.
Just because you don't know any better doesn't mean it's not true.
A few minutes pass, and a young man comes walking into the Pickled Inn, and he definitely looks a lot more downtrodden than any of you have seen others in the city. He's wearing very, very patchy, ugly clothing. It's almost all like grays and browns and earthy colors, and it's very patchy. And his hair is just a mess, and he just kind of has like a dirty demeanor overall. Despite that, he seems surprisingly alert. And when he looks to the back, he kind of makes a weird sign with his hands, and Helga points at the lot of you, and he nods before going up to the counter, and he puts down 3 pieces of silver, and they exchange a few brief, quiet words, and he comes over and says, "Oi there, are you the lot going to Hegerdorf then?"
Yes.
And you are?
He nods his head and says, "Oh, I'm Hans. I'm from Hagerdorf. I'm supposed to guide you to the village."
Sounds
Rich
good.
place,
Hans.
Hagerdorf, then.
What'd you say, Ben?
Rich place, then, Hagerdorf. Tossing around 3 shillings.
One more time?
He said it was a
place,
rich...
Hagerdorf.
Yeah, he said it was a rich place.
Hagerdorf. toss around 3 shillings
Oh,
when we
okay.
already paid for our food.
He shakes his head and says, "Oh no, that's not my money. That's from Lord Silverhand. We don't have that kind of money where I'm from. We really should be going though."
Drac nods and stands, leaving his mug on the table.
Verstadt will gather his things and put them on his back.
I will make sure to drink all of the wine before I leave, because that was expensive.
He looks down at the 4 of you and he frowns and he says, Did y'all eat already?
No.
He kind of...
Popping the last of the pickled egg in his mouth, Wrist will say, well, a tiny bit.
He kind of gives a dirty look in Helga's direction, who seems studiously avoiding his gaze, and says, "All right, we'll stop at one of the vendors out of town. Come on."
All right, how far is this, Higordorf?
He scratches his chin and says, "Only a couple days, so long as we don't run into any trouble or get lost."
Good. And the amount of times you've done this, how many times have you gotten lost or run into trouble?
Oh, only twice. Thomas used to do it, but Thomas didn't come back, so now I do it.
Twice out of how many times did you say?
Twice.
I see.
A reassuring average.
Hans kind of pulls at his collar nervously and says, "It'll be fine. The bloody hounds were supposed to have cleared the path before I left, so we shouldn't run into any trouble."
Cleared the path of?
Oh, just the usual forest critters.
Goblins, orcs, beastmen.
He kind of, his eyes kind of widen and goes, "Whoa!" And he makes a bizarre symbol over his chest and says, "No, few of those, thankfully. We just have some nasty animal issues. People get lost is the main thing, I think."
Should be boring then.
The kind of animals that make people get lost. What a wonderful, quaint country you live in.
Ver begins to think of animals that would have this kind of attitude.
And the Empire, you probably can't blame them that much.
There is coaching inns that we could rest at during night, right?
he genuinely laughs, and then he looks and he says, "Oh, no.
The dwarf is also staring at the halfling like, what?
No, we'll be camping, so hopefully that's okay."
Of course.
If
All right,
we're
I have a
being
very
paid...
important question.
Sorry, Ben.
If we're camping, who's carrying the food?
He kind of looks down at you for a moment. He says, "I will, unless someone else offers, but it's Lord Silverhand was very specific that halflings, I'm afraid, aren't allowed to carry the food. It's part of the contract."
Well, I guess I'll just have to do with not having all that dead weight. When we're running from rabid wolves, well, I'll think fondly of you.
He holds open the door for the lot of you, and he says, he makes another bizarre symbol again. He says, "By the gods, could you stop trying to jinx this expedition? I just need to get you back to the village safely."
Verstadt will exit the inn quickly.
Drac is still kind of just like, what is with this short creature thing?
Hans leads you to the eastern edge of town, and while there, he does purchase plenty of rations and food, like decent food. And you notice once again that brass and silver are flowing from his pockets. If anything, he seems to kind of overpay, and you can tell that he's definitely not used to dealing with the hustle and bustle of Jettenberg, and definitely gets borderline swindled a few times, but doesn't seem overtly concerned by it.
Am I able to, perhaps, side up to him and kind of give him confidence?
It's not so much that he's lacking confidence, it's more that he doesn't necessarily realize the concept of haggling desperately, and he seems like he just wants to leave.
As a desperate man, Verstadt will go up to Hans and say, do you need help haggling? You seem to be getting fairly ripped off, I would say.
His eyebrows go up and he says, am I? Oh, sure, if you want to handle it. I can't give you the money, though. That'd be against the contract.
No, of course not. Verstadt will eye the money longingly, but... and can I roll a haggle check to help him?
Sure, you can.
The dwarf with 18 fellowship is going nowhere near this check.
So I don't do a great job with the deal.
Verstadt, as you,
You gonna reroll, Aztec?
No.
Okay. As you attempt to do your best to help him, you start getting irritated by how stubborn, fiery, and just ill-willed all of these merchants are on the east side of town, and you end up losing your temper a little bit. And as the lot of you are dealing with a merchant offering some tents that he's apparently supposed to pick up for y'all to sit in, you get so...
Can I interrupt and stop this idiot from doing something?
No.
Okay.
You just because it's a fumble. You get so irritable that you basically get up in this guy's face and start shouting at him to the point that he refuses to sell to you. And a couple of the town guard kind of approach and break up the two of you, and y'all basically get not so politely ushered out the east gate. So you are without tents for this journey.
Why, never. He was the rudest tent seller I have ever bargained with, I'll tell you that. I was giving him quite the deal.
You're an idiot, Big John.
Verstadt will
For once, I
sigh.
will actually agree with a halfling.
It could have
were-
gone better.
Hans looks a little deflated.
The point of haggling is you say a number lower than they'll accept, and then you slowly and reluctantly increase it to something they will accept. Going lower is not how you haggle.
Right. I am familiar with the concept. It just went quite poorly, I will admit. Okay.
Don't
okay.
say.
So,
The dwarf is just sitting here like face palming.
Hans sighs audibly, and as you all are leaving, he pats down at his everyone roll a perception check.
Also, real quick, why was that a fumble on 98? It wasn't a double.
Because 95 to 100.
Yeah, 95 to 100 is an auto fail.
Oh, okay.
I rolled an 84, so we're gonna see
One
if
sec, Sotek. I gotta switch browsers because I remember for some reason my rolls are not coming through when I use Firefox on your campaign.
Okay, that's fine. Take your
Of course,
time.
man.
Want me to roll a D100 for you while you switch browsers?
No, we'll just wait for him.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I can always edit this.
You have the power.
You won't, though. And this can be confirmed by the YouTube comments.
All right, we got an 84 for a thief, so he's
I
not
don't even have to re-listen to this video. I could just check.
he's not
That
gonna
is
succeed.
true. Chat, if Sotek doesn't edit this out, call him out in the comments.
So, in between, while Cold's doing that, can I roll any sort of check to know what I would know academically of the Hager cribs?
You can just ask.
So, what would I know of the Hager cribs?
Okay.
Academically.
So the thing that you know basically, having Lore Reichland, is that the Hager cribs are a little infamous as a haunted myth-shrieked area that have forests and high peaks and even some swamplands like much of the Reichland does. That being said, they have a reputation of being haunted, but enough to the point that most sensible people would not choose to go there for any reason. However, there are some lucrative mining operations in the southern parts of the mountains, which all are going notably north of that. But there is a lot of money to be made in the Hager Cribs for those willing to brave it, but there's a lot of ill fortune around the people that go there to make their riches. Some people make it out fine and say that, they made a lot of money and yada, 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 but most people don't trust them that much. That being said, there's no, specific legends. If you want anything more specific than what I've just told you, you'd have to roll a check.
Okay.
I totally knew all this and wasn't bullshitting when I said there would be mining there.
All right. Okay, fair. Great. So, as y'all are leaving town, you notice a young man who approaches especially during the commotion. Y'all were being followed by two young men, and just as you're about to leave town, one of them attempts to bump into and take something, notably a pouch, from Hans, but before he can succeed, he sees you, Verve, staring at him. And your alien features, especially your incredibly bizarre almond-shaped eyes that have a lot more darkness than humans are used to, he gets very unnerved and immediately just breaks away perpendicular to your group and gets the hell out of Dodge. Hans is completely oblivious, though.
I will make sure to keep an eye on him, or on Hans, to make sure there's no other attempts.
Okay, you don't run into any more issues on your way out.
Did I see that with my roll?
No, you did not.
His crit success?
Crits don't matter, unless you're in combat.
Okay.
Okay then. So, actually, Verstat, you would have figured it out if he had actually tried to do it, but he didn't even get close.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I was just gonna say to Verve, see, that kind of guy, that's what I was talking about, giving us the eye.
But in any event, you arrive in the Reich.
Them the eye.
You start walking into the Reichwald that's going to take you up into the Hager Cribs. And the Reichwald is not like the Drakewald in that it's not super oppressive compared to a lot of forests in the Empire. It's not like you can see the sun in the sky. It is still fairly creepy. It is still a Warhammer forest, so there are dangers involved, and any person with half a brain knows to be at least somewhat on alert. But the Reichwald does not have a grand reputation for being problematic or concerning. So, you start heading on the road into the Hager Cribs, and as you're walking, Hans sort of turns to the four of you and says, "So, you lot are joining in with Silverhand's company, then?"
I do believe that's the man we're supposed to meet up with. Yes.
He nods and says, Otto pays well, from what I've heard. I've only met him once. He never comes into the village."
And how much do they pay you to do this dangerous task of ferrying travelers?
He perks up and he says, I'm getting 8 brass for this. That is more than I would earn in 2 years' allowance, so I'm pretty okay with this for just walking.
You're getting 8
boy, you're
brass.
minting it.
And you said this journey is dangerous.
He sort of scoffs and he says, living in Hagerdorf is always dangerous.
You might want to press for a little bit more. Just a thought.
Especially with the spending you do in Jettenberg.
He gets a slight nervous look on his face and says, "Oh no, you don't haggle with Lord Silverhand."
Verstadt will chuckle nervously.
He sort of looks around as y'all keep walking as if he's expecting someone to be listening in. And he says, "My uncle once tried to negotiate funds for using our farms with Lord Silverhand. He disappeared 3 nights later, never came home. My mother was she was beside herself for weeks about it."
Tell me about this Lord Silverhand. What kind of man is he?
As you're walking, he gets a little nervous, but seems to take strength in the fact that you're in the middle of nowhere, essentially. And you're all about you can still see Jettenberg in the distance as you're walking. And he says, "Well, He's a wizard, first of all, so he's pretty scary, but I mean,
A wizard, you say?
he nods and says, "Oh yes, a powerful wizard. He's incredibly strong."
Would you happen to know what college he graduated from?
He kind of side eyes you, and he says, "College?
What the
What colors
magic?
does he
What does
wear?
his magic look like?
Oh, I don't know. I've only seen him once. He doesn't cast. But he has a whole fortress, and it moves."
Don't say.
It moves.
Drac like blinks heavily and says, "Is it true you human wizards color code yourselves? Is that really a thing?"
I have heard that, a lot of wizards can color code themselves. I personally just consider myself a bit of peacock. I wouldn't standardize all bright wizards all bright wizards as wearing these type of clothes. Some of us
you
are
a
quite.
movie wizard.
Hans jumps as he hears this conversation. He turns around and he points at you and he says, "You're a wizard."
Well, I happen to be a wizard. Yes.
He takes about a good 8 steps back before shakily pulling out this strange little. It looks like almost like a silver. It kind of looks like a silver emblem, almost like a badge, and he kind of like holds it out towards you as if to ward you off, and he says, "You have to take this then."
Dear child, he is about as dangerous as
A
a
wizard.
rat in winter.
Whatever. I approach Hans and I take the medallion or whatever and I say, "I will take this, but fear not, Hans. I am a graduated wizard and I am quite safe. You have nothing to fear."
Except if you got money. He's broke, apparently.
Hans puts a hand protectively over his money pouch, and he stays as far away from you as he possibly can. And you notice he almost seems to hang a little closer towards Drac. But he as you keep walking, he keeps taking kind of weird looks at Verve as well. But he looks down at Drac at this point and he says, are you here to join with the dwarf clan?"
What clan are they?
He seems to he kind of narrows his eyes and kind of fumbles over his words for a little bit. He says, "Bronze clan. I can't say it right. They always get mad at me if I try and say it."
I'll go talk to them. I'm here on other business. Signing up with this operation is just a good way to do it and get paid. People need to know what's in the Hager crypts.
He nods slowly and he says, "There's a lot of things in the Hager cribs."
So I've heard. That's why we need to know.
At the mention of the Hager cribs, he does get quiet for a good few hours until dusk starts to set. He doesn't talk too much. But dark starts to settle in.
Drac, meanwhile, will give him a long, rambling explanation of weird rituals you can do to fend off evil magics.
Roll a fellowship check.
This
or a charm check.
Brilliantly. No.
Okay. As you start to give your explanation on how to deal with the evils of Norska, unfortunately, being from Norska, you're much more desensitized to the horrors of chaos and monsters. And I was just going. Nope, too bad. And the things you're describing are much more horrific than the things he has heard growing up. And so the child ends up virtually petrified by the end of your tales.
I will
missing most of the how to avoid evil part of the conversation, and instead seeing much more enwrapped in the new evils he had never imagined or heard of parts of the conversation.
Excellent.
I tried.
I will motion to Hans to come closer to me and say, don't worry, boy. I know the forest. I know things that lurk in it. Just stay near me.
Are you still wearing your hood?
Yes.
Are you trying to conceal the fact that you're an elf from him?
I'm not looking directly at him or making any like outward expression of it. No.
You're not appearing overtly elfy.
Okay, he kind of nods at your words, but when he looks at you, he gets kind of like weirded out still. But the time comes for y'all to set up camp. And you find, despite the fact that Hans looks a little bit helpless, he's actually surprisingly useful when it comes to setting up a camp quickly and efficiently. It seems that he is very well suited to wilderness environments, and he actually gets a fire going and finds a reasonable camp location for y'all incredibly quick.
Rock nods.
Could I'm famished.
And he passes out food.